Good afternoon, all of you. Uh, Thank you once again for our joining our that we have started this week, starting from Monday. So already we have done 3 webinars. Today is in the fourth one, and tomorrow is in the fifth one. So we thought during this lockdown phase, what we should do. So we thought let us use this opportunity to engage with the community and understand what all technologies, processes, best practices we can follow in this work from home kind of situations. Because this is a kind of new world. Maybe all of us, none of us rather have ever faced this kind of pandemic situations in our lifetime, but the lot of countries are affected. So this technology series is supported by many organizations. A10 Network is one of them. SOTI, Go for Knowledge, Palo Alto, FireEye, they have supported us. Our community partner InfoSec Foundation helped us for the outreach, reaching to many communities across the globe. We are thankful to all of them. So this session will be handled by Mr. Tarun Verma. Tarun, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, Tarun is from A10 Networks. He is having more than 15 years experience in the domain and in his multiple stints in different capacity in different organizations. Before I handing over to Tarun, I'll try to set the ground rules. So the flow will be initially Tarun will be presenting the session. During that time, if you have any queries anywhere, you can use your chat box and shoot the queries, park the queries. So once the floor will be open, so as a moderator, I'll translate back this to Tarun. He will try to answer those queries, and then we'll open the floor. So any one of you, unmute your microphone that time and shoot your queries. By default, throughout the time, all of your microphone will be muted. Tarun, over to you.
Thanks, Shubham. So, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is safe, sound, and staying at home. As Sushuman said, that the best utilization of this lockdown is actually to enhance our knowledge, so that we are better prepared when all this will be over, right, to tackle the situation. Right. So I will start with the company introduction. What is A10 and what we do? Right. So we actually started in uh, 2004 as a company, and we launched our first platform, which is ACOS, Advanced Core Operating System, we call it. We launched our ACOS platform in 2007, and based on that particular platform, we actually developed multiple products. So the first product that we developed was application delivery controller, right, which was designed to handle a very high performance layer 4 to layer 7 switching requirements. And then we evolved that particular product to be supported on multiple form factor, right? So we supported physical appliances, support virtual form factor, and apart from that, we also support bare metal, right? So you can actually install this particular solution on any Intel-based hardware and Intel-based NIC cards. Then we evaluated our product to support something called carrier grade netting, which is a solution which is specifically focusing towards the service provider that actually helps them to preserve IP version 4 and migrate to IP version 6. Then we added multiple security modules like SSL visibility, DDoS, firewall functionality into the same product, right? So there are certain solutions from A10 which is available as a dedicated DDoS platform, and there are certain features which is there are certain features which is available as an integrated feature on rest of the products as well. Then we do support multi-cloud environment, right? So all the solution is available with the on-premise form factor, as well as if you want to utilize these solution into a cloud environment, it does not matter whether it's a public cloud or private cloud. We do have that particular solution. And recently, we actually have enabled business intelligence into each of our solutions, so that you get a very granular report and analytics from each of the solutions that can actually help you in terms of taking the business oriented decisions. Right. So in India,
Voice
we
is
started
breaking.
in.
हिसाब से please. Your voice is getting.
Is there any query? Okay. So we started in India in 2012. So within 8 years of operations, we actually have accumulated a very good customer recognition within India. Right, you can see yourself. Right, so we are very strong in service provider domain. We have a lot of customer into a banking segment, online portal. Right, so we are pretty good in all these areas. So in terms of the solution, A10 actually primarily has five different solution offering. The first solution is DOS DDoS mitigation solution. That's a dedicated DOS DDoS we are talking about, right? So that is a detection and mitigation solution. And on top of that, you will have a Galaxy to manage and orchestrate the entire DDoS mitigation cycle. The next solution that we have is SSL visibility solution. As you know, day by day, encrypted traffic is actually increasing over the internet. All right. So until unless you have the visibility into that particular traffic, you can't have effective security. So that is the reason we actually bought this particular solution, and we are seeing a pretty good success by using this particular solution into the market, into the market, specifically into a banking and financial segment. Then we have a ADC, which is our flagship product, load balancer, right? So we will be seeing more detail onto that particular solution today. And for the service provider segment, we have CGN solution, which is IPv4 preservation and IPv6 migration for a service provider segment. The last solution that we have is a convergent firewall. Convergent firewall is nothing but a superset of application delivery controller, CGN, and SSLI all together into the same platform. To manage everything, apart from the DDoS mitigation solution, we have something called Harmony Controller that gives you a centralized management capabilities, and on top of that, it actually gives you a pretty good analytics of each of the solution. Right, as I mentioned in the introductory slide, right, the solution actually comes into multiple form factor. The traditional form factor is appliance-based solution. So we have different appliance-based form factor which is available to cater requirement from SMB segment to a tier one service provider segment. Right. So we have that particular spread in our appliance-based solution. On top of that, we support bare metal. Right. So up to 60 Gbps of throughput, you should be able to get it bare metal also. Then we support a pretty good support for the virtual form factor, right? So all the well-known hypervisor is supported by A10, whether it's VMware, KVM, Microsoft, right? We do support multiple hypervisor. Then A10's offering is also available on cloud, whether it's public cloud or private cloud, like Azure, Google Cloud, or Amazon, right? So A10 offering is available on these cloud instances as a cloud instances as well. Then we also support a container form factor, which is cloud native, right? So if you have a requirement from uh, typically the software companies actually wants to go with the container way, right? So they don't want to limit their solution uh, by limiting it with a particular appliance or a particular server, right? So that's why they try to go with the container way. We do have a solution in a container form factor. Good part is the Harmony controller, which is our management platform actually can give you the similar kind of a management as well as analytics, irrespective of the form factor that you choose, right? So, for example, if you have a data center on premise and if you have a DR in cloud, right? The Harmony controller will give you the single pane of class management that will give you similar kind of a management console as well as analytics from two different instances. Right. So what are we doing? Right. We are actually solving today's modern day challenges that we are seeing, whether it's because of the increase of the SSL traffic, whether it's because of the increase of the adoption of SaaS-based services, whether you are facing issues in terms of migrating your application from an in-house data center to a cloud-based data center. Right. So that's what we are doing right now by using our platforms. So the first solution, today we are going to see a couple of solutions. So the first solution that we are going to see is the application delivery controller, which is nothing but a layer 4 to layer 7 comprehensive load balancer, right? And application security module that we have on top of that. So we are going to see that particular product in detail. And the second solution after this, what we are going to see is the SSL visibility solution that we have. So we call it a multi-cloud solution from A10, right? So what does A10 multi-cloud solution actually offer? Right. The first thing that it offers is a pretty high performance layer 4 to layer 7 load balancing, right? We start with the starting and from the appliance perspective could be 5 Gbps, and we go all the way to 385 Gbps. The virtual form factor can scale up to 100 gig, right? It can be as low as 200 Mbps. The bare metal also has 10 gig, 20 gig, 40 gig, and 60 gig option. Then the cloud could be starting from 100 Mbps going all the way to 10 Gbps, right? So it's a pretty comprehensive scalability that you will be getting. On top of that, we support global server load balancing on the same platform so that if you want to distribute your application across multiple geographical location, and it could be a combination of on-premise with cloud as well, right? So we do support that, right? So there is an inbuilt global server load balancing module which is available. The third objective that we have is to provide application security and redundancy, right? So in terms of the application security, we support web application firewall, DNS application firewall, application access management, and there is an integrated DDoS protection, which is much more tuned to mitigate any kind of application level DDoS attack that is targeting your application infrastructure. Then in terms of the redundancy, we support VRRP, which is a fairly open standard redundancy protocol, right? So you don't face any kind of interoperability issue with any of the networking vendor, right? So you can choose firewall of any vendor, you can choose routers of any vendor, which is deployed in a L3 mode, and you don't get any redundancy conflict on top of that. We do support scale out as well, right? So if your requirement is low on day one and you want to scale very high, depending on your business projections, right? So we support clustering of up to 8 devices so that you can have a very, very high throughput, right? On the performance, although this slide mentioned 220 Gbps, but we have recently launched a new appliance that can scale up to 385 Gbps. The SSL throughput is still not known because it's still into limited availability uh, uh, phase for that particular hardware. The current connection on 7440, which is a 220 gig, is 256 million. On the newer platform, it is going to be 386 million. Then on top of that, we support something called partitioning or the virtualization within the same piece of hardware. We do support 1023 partitions, and there is a plan to increase this particular value to 5,000 application delivery partitions. The fourth feature that we have in our multi-cloud offering is flexibility in terms of the form factor, right? As I mentioned earlier, right? You can pick and choose whether you want to go with the hardware or you want to go with the software. Within software also, you have multiple options to pick and choose. You have VM based, you have public cloud, private cloud, you have bare metal, right? The private cloud is more on the container based form factor. And then you have a flexible licensing. That means if you want to go with the software form factor, irrespective whether you want to choose VM container or bare metal, you can actually go with a term license, right, with the overall capacity capping, rather than going with a individual perpetual license, which is a huge capex cost, upfront cost, right? So it gives you a pretty good entry point in terms of adopting to A10 ADC solutions. And the last functionality that we have, or the last focus point that we have, is give you the centralized management and analytics, right? So what we do is we give you the visibility of per application, per transaction kind of stuff, right? These are the various models that is available in terms of the appliance-based solution, right? So we start as low as 5 GPS with our Thunder 840, which is pretty good for a small enterprise kind of a environment. The real entry-level box for us, which fits pretty well for a mid-level requirement, is 1040. Then you have the mid-range appliances, the 3000 series, 4000 series, and the 5000 series.
Just hold on, let me see. Someone is on unmuted. Let me just see.
There is a lot of background noise that is coming.
Yeah, that's what I'm just trying to say.
Uh,
अरे यार नहीं करेगा तो ना ये ज्यादा इसका वो मेंस हो जाएगा
I think it is better. So start off. I'm just monitoring.
oh, okay, right. And on the high end the offering, we have 5840, 6440, 7440, right, ranging from 100 gig to 200 gig. And the next phase is 7550, which can actually go up to 385 gig. On the virtual front, right, we have options available on KVM and VMware, which can scale up to 100 gig. The Microsoft can scale up to 8 gig. And on the cloud, right, whether it's Azure, AWS, or Oracle, we can scale up to 10 gig of throughput. Then we have a container-based form factor, which is available as a GNO, right? So if any of the customer has a requirement to go with a container-based ADC, right, A10 has a solution which is available now. On a bare metal, right, as I mentioned, there are multiple licenses which is available: 10 gig, 20 gig, 40 gig, and 60 gig. Then the licensing policy is pretty simple. You can go with a perpetual license if there is a requirement of one or two instances. If your deployment is spread across multiple instances rather than going for each instance cost, which is a huge cost up front, right? You can go with a flexible kind of a concept where the offering can come as a subscription with the overall capacity capping, right? So, for example, if the overall requirement is 10 gig spread across a number of VMs with that number of locations, right? You can take a subscription of 10 Gbps, and we don't restrict you in terms of how many instances you will be able to make it out from that 10 Gbps and which form factor from the software you choose, right? So it's a cumulative throughput. Then with Harmony controller, right, which will integrate with each of the offering that we have. And at the same time, if the customer is having their own management or automation tool, Harmony controller can actually do a API based integration with that particular tool as well. Right. So let's go deep into what kind of a application delivery functionality that we have. So our application delivery functionality is actually focused on multiple features that we have, right? So one of the core feature is actually to make the application available, right? And there are multiple sub feature which is available on A10 platform that makes sure that your application is available. We are going to see that in detail. The second concept that we have in terms of the application delivery is to optimize the application, right? Since we are front-ending each and every transaction which is coming from internet to your application infrastructure, we are in a better position to do the analysis of that particular transaction and do certain kind of optimization on top of that. And the third functionality that we have actually emphasized on is actually analytics and management, right? So a lot of people actually have load balancers within their infrastructure, but they are not utilizing that particular load balancer to get the business intelligence out of that, right? So we are the first ADC vendor who actually has bought out that kind of a concept, and a lot of customers are actually using the analytics that we have to make business decisions. So, for example, for the next year, if you want to have a budget ready in terms of what kind of a technology that you want to invest in terms of the application infrastructure, the reports from Harmony Controller can actually help you out. Right. So in terms of the application availability, the first feature that we have is advanced server load balancer, right? So a single piece of load balancer can be used to do the load balancing for multiple application as long as the physical proximity can allow it, right? So if you have 10 different application hosted within your data center, the same piece of hardware or the same pair of load balancer will can be utilized to load balance across all the applications. It could be web-based application, it could be client server-based application like DNS, FTP, could be anything. Very comprehensive set of load balancing algorithm. We support more than 15 different load balancing algorithm, right? Depending on the application, you can pick and choose. We have a pretty comprehensive set of session persistencies as well, right? So you can have cookie persistency, you can have source IP persistency. If you're doing a deployment in a service provider environment, you can have a destination IP persistency as well, right? So depending on what application,
खराब बीच में मतलब रेगुलर नहीं रहो
yeah. So depending on what kind of application you are doing a load balancing, you can pick and choose the persistency. Then on the in terms of the application availability, the same platform supports global server load balancing, right? So we do support DNS-based server load balancing, where A10 ADC will act as a authoritative DNS server and will be responsible to resolve the IP address for the application, and that IP address can belong to any of the data centers that you have, or it could be from the cloud as well. Right, so that's a pretty comprehensive set of application global server load balancing, which is available on A10. We also support IP-based RHI, which is root health injection, right? Which leverages the Anycast functionality, which is available on the dynamic routing protocol. So for the application that does not support DNS resolution, and one of the classic example is DNS itself, right? We do support Anycasting to make those applications geo-redundant. The good part is the global server load balancing is an integrated part of A10 ADC offering, and there is no extra license which is required to activate this particular functionality. The HA of load balancer is also one of the critical element, as I mentioned earlier, that we support standard PRRP based redundancy protocol, which is a standard nowadays. We also support something called scale out, right? So, for example, if your requirement is low right now and you don't want to have a bottleneck in terms of the scalability, currently what A10 offers is a clustering of up to 8 devices. So you can have up to 7 times capacity of a single device with N plus one, right? So N device would be active and one device would be backup for any failure that you have into that particular cluster. The scalability is pretty good. The reliability of the hardware is also very good. The average MTBF that we have on our platform is around about 16 years, which is pretty good. Then we support something called contexting. You call it contexting, you call it partitioning, you call it virtualization. It's pretty much the similar thing, right? So the kind of a virtualization that we support on our appliance-based solution is not dependent on the hypervisor. That's why you don't see any kind of a performance degradation that you have. The idea is to create multiple isolated environment, and each environment can be treated as a dedicated load balancer, right? So we support application delivery partition as a standard feature on each of the platform that we have. the number of application delivery platform actually depends on which hardware you are going to choose. So, for example, for the entry level box, which is 840, you support 32 instances, which is equivalent to the vThunder that we have. And on the highest end box, which is 5,000, 6,000, or 7,000 series appliances, you can scale up to 1023 instances. So that's a pretty good scalability that we have in terms of the application delivery partition. What's the benefit that you will be getting out of that? So if you have, say, 10 different applications, typically what happens, the owner of different applications would be different teams within the organization. What you can do is you can create a tenant and you can assign that particular tenant to a dedicated application and give the access to that particular team to manage their day-to-day activities without interfering to the rest of the tenants, right? So it would be an isolated environment. There would be a dedicated admin, which could be read only or read write, right? So whatever privileges these guys actually need, you can provision those privileges and give a dedicated load balancer, which is running on the same piece of hardware to a particular application owner. And again, there is no cost, right, in terms of the number of application delivery partition that you can create on a single piece of hardware. It comes as a standard feature and it is included into the base license that we have. Then, since load balancer is acting as a inline device, right, we can do application acceleration, right? So there are multiple features of application acceleration that we have. First feature is actually TCP and HTTP optimization. Since we are acting as a full proxy, in a typical load balancer, the load balancer acts as a reverse proxy. If you're using our solution as a SSL interception or explicit proxy, then it will act as a forward proxy as well, right? So we support full proxy functionality, whether it's reverse proxy or forward proxy. We are in a better position to actually play around with the TCP stack and can enable multiple HTTP optimization features as well, right? So features like connection reuse, selective acknowledgement, or keeping the client connection open for multiple requests. We also support window scaling. In terms of application level optimization, we support RAM caching. That means for the repetitive object or repetitive queries, right, rather than sending each and every query to the backend server, the load balancer can cache it, and the subsequent request for the same object can be delivered from the cache rather than from the server, right? We do support HTTP compression, where load balancer will do the compression and the browser at the client end will do the decompression. We also support HTTP pipelining, reusing the same connection again and again for multiple requests. And we also support HTTP 2.0, right? So we act as a HTTP 2.0 gateway in case your backend server does not support HTTP 2.0. The connection from the client to the load balancer can be HTTP 2.0, and the backend connection could be on HTTP 1.1 or 1.0. Then we support something called AFLAGs, although A10 load balancer supports very comprehensive suite of applications, right? Up to 30 different applications are actually supported at the application layer, which is a pretty good or comprehensive support that we have. But even if we are not natively supporting anything, um, we can actually create a TCL based program and we can actually customize the behavior of the load balancer as per the local requirement for the application owners. Right. So it's a very, very powerful tool. It's a kind of a DPI that we do, right? So based on any of the parameter from layer 2 to layer 7, we can take a decision what to do with this particular traffic, whether to block it, whether to allow it, whether to send it to a different server, whether to modify some content on top of that, right? So we can do that particular stuff. It's a very powerful tool that we have. Then we do support SSL acceleration, or you can call it SSL offloading, right? On the highest end platform, that is 7440, we can support up to 75 Gbps of bulk SSL throughput, which is pretty good, right? a lot of big e-commerce companies are using A10 platform to do SSL offloading. Pretty comprehensive set of cipher support, right? So we do support TLS 1.2 and TLS 1.3. We do support PFS and ECC ciphers, which is uh, actually getting a lot of interaction nowadays. People are moving from standard RSA to ACC kind of a ciphers. And if there is a requirement for FIPS compliance, there are dedicated hardware available with A10 that those are FIPS compliant hardware as well, right? We can manage the certificates centrally, or we can actually integrate with a centralized repository of the certificate as well. If there is a requirement, we can do the renewal or revocation of the certificate dynamically as well. Right. So in terms of application acceleration and the flexibility, right, means the crux is A10 ADC platform is a full proxy, right, with a lot of flexibility in terms of the programmability. You can actually create custom programs to change the behavior of the standard ADC that can suit your localized environment, right? So if there is a department which has a homegrown application and needs a very, very specific set of functionality on top of the ADC, we can do that. There is a full IPv6 feature parity that is guaranteed by A10. That means whatever is working on IP version 4 will definitely work on IP version 6, right? So people who are looking for IPv6 migration in terms of the enterprise or in terms of the application, A10 solution can actually help them. So if you have a very, very legacy application that only supports IPv4, but if you have a compliance requirement to publish it on IPv6 as well, A10 ADC can front end those application and will be able to publish the same application on IP version 4 as well as on IP version 6. When we support HTTP 2.0, we act as a HTTP 2.0 proxy, right? So that if there is a version mismatch between the client and the server, we can act as a proxy for that. SSL acceleration, we have already discussed, right? Up to 75 Gbps is what we can do on 7440s. With 7650 coming in, we will be enhancing these numbers as well. In terms of the performance optimization, we do TCP optimization, we do optimization specific to HTTP and HTTPS application. We can act as a full proxy, so we can support as a dual node, dual net as well. And the latency that has been introduced by A10 is in a tune of 20 to 40 microseconds, right? So it's a pretty fast platform that we have developed. Right. Then we have Harmony Controller, which is a centralized management platform that we have, and that also gives you a pretty good analytics out of that, right? So centralized management capabilities as well as visibility and analytics is the core functionality of Harmony Controller. And if you have a DevOps kind of a environment, right, Harmony Controller can actually integrate with any kind of a management and orchestration system that the customer is having in their environment. And you can almost automate each and everything that you need to do on the load balancer. You don't have to log into the load balancer either from GUI or CLI to do anything, right? Your automation platform can do it for you. Right, so this is the snapshot that we have taken from the Harmony controller, right? So it can give you real-time service statistics, how the service is actually behaving, right? How much traffic is there on that particular service, what kind of a response that we are getting from that particular service. If there are too many errors, right, it can flag you in terms of the color code as well, where you can take the corrective actions on that particular servers or services. It also gives you a pretty good visibility in terms of the end-to-end latency. That means each transaction can actually be divided into multiple parts. What is the latency from client to the load balancer? What kind of a latency is there from um, load balancer to the backend server? And the latency between the load balancer and the backend server can further be divided into different parts, right? What is the latency that has been introduced by the network? What kind of a latency has been introduced by the operating system? And what kind of a latency has been introduced by the application itself, right? So if there is a specific module or a specific um network element which is creating an issue, right, you will be able to pinpoint without doing too much of a troubleshooting, right? The dashboard itself will be able to give you a pretty good analysis of what element is causing delay into the application performance. Then you can have a client specific analytics, what kind of a browser is actually accessing accessing this particular application, whether the request is coming from mobile or a desktop or a laptop, or which kind of operating system is making request, right? And what kind of a response code is coming from the application server, right? So you'll be in a better position to identify what are the different bottlenecks which is there in your application infrastructure, and what kind of a planning that you need to do to eliminate those bottlenecks. Right. So this is a snapshot of the per transaction delays that I was talking about. Right. So you will get the average latency of a particular transaction. Right. And per transaction, you will be getting the bifurcation, the client side latency, the server side latency. And in the server side latency, the latency that is being introduced by network, operating system, application server. Right. So it's pretty comprehensive. And this is per transaction, right? This is not the average. You will be getting this particular information per transaction. Right. Not only analytics and centralized management capabilities, actually, Harmony Controller can actually reduce the troubleshooting time also significantly. Right. So based on our experience, what we can say is if a particular event is taking around about 150 minutes to troubleshoot, with Harmony Controller, you can reduce it to as low as 20 minutes. And your confidence level is also very high because there is a very less manual intervention into the analysis that you're doing, right? So a lot of things is being done by the system itself by using artificial intelligence on top of the different metrics that it has, right? So there are multiple metrics that goes into Harmony Controller to do the analysis and troubleshooting, right? 29 different metrics from the web client, 30 different metrics from the web server, right? And 27 different metrics from the load balancer itself, right? So it is in a better position to analyze these metrics, which is practically not possible for an admin guy to do it manually. So it's a pretty good solution, right? So the next features or set of features that we have on A10 ADC platform is application security. So there are multiple features which comprise this application security on ADC, 18 ADC platform, right? One of the features, and which is one of the predominant features that we have, is the application firewall that can actually help customer from any kind of application level attack that is happening on their web applications. And we have application access management, right? So if there is a requirement to do a single sign-on for all the application that is being accessed through the load balancer, we can utilize application access management feature from 18 ADC. And there is a pretty good set of integrated DDoS and protocol anomaly protection, which is available on 18 ADC. This is different from the standalone DDoS offering that we have, but still it's a pretty comprehensive DDoS mitigation system that we have. And we have a DNS application firewall, right? So if there is a requirement for protecting your DNS infrastructure, the DNS application firewall can be utilized. And then there is an option for threat intelligence, right? So we can consume IP reputation database within 18 ADC, and you can create policies based on the reputation of the incoming IP address. Right. So for application security, you can have DNS application firewall and web application firewall. Right. So we have a ICSA certified web application firewall, which is available on A10 ADC, which can be utilized to achieve a OWSP top 10 compliance, which is mandatory for all the banks and financial institute now. If you have a DNS infrastructure, you can utilize DNS application firewall to protect your DNS application infrastructure. Then you have a access and authentication control can be done by using application access management. And then you have a integrated DDoS protection system. And optionally, you can actually have a firewall module that is also running on top of ADC. We have discussed at the start, right? CFW actually is a superset of all the three offerings that we have. If you are going with a CFW, you will be getting a firewall module also into that. So web application firewall, it's integrated. There is no license uh, apart from the base ADC license that you need, right? So there is no license eventually, which is there, right? It is the ICSA certified web application firewall, pretty good, right? So only 7 or 8 vendors are actually having an ICSA certified WAF. A10 is actually one of them. So this web application firewall can be utilized to meet any compliance requirements like PCI DSS or HIPAA compliance. And on top of that, right, since it's an integrated web application firewall with the load balancer, the scalability is also pretty good. So any kind of SQL injection or broken authentication, or if you want to mask any kind of information that is being sent from the server to the client, right, you can actually block those kind of exposure at the web application firewall. It does support parsing of your XML traffic and basic checks on JSON traffic as well, right? And then on top of that, we can integrate with any kind of a logging solution that you already have within your infrastructure. Right. So this is a detailed feature mapping diagram of the WAF that we have. There are certain checks that we can do from the client side. For example, authenticating the client source IP address by using our threat intelligence platform, or maybe you can create geolocation policies to restrict the access to certain geolocation areas. Like, for example, if you are serving only an Indian territory, you can restrict, or you can have a less aggressive policies for any request that is coming from India, and for rest of the geographical location, you can either block it or maybe do a more aggressive policy on top of that. Then you can authenticate the client by using application access management module that we have. So this is before accessing the application itself, right? And you can do SSL offloading. And during accessing, on the request side, you can have you can check the protocol compliances. You can configure the policies to mitigate any kind of buffer overflow attacks. You can do a request check, sanity check for SQL injection or cross-site scripting. You can check for after normalizing the URL for any kind of evasion techniques, which is being used by attackers to bypass security measures that you are taking. Right? You can check for form consistency as well. You can protect from any kind of a brute force attack. And on top of that, if you want to have XML and JSON security, you can enable that. That is more from the request side. And on the response side, you can actually do the basic DLP for your GDPR compliances. You can mask any kind of response that is coming from server in terms of the data or server response code. You can do a cookie encryption, right, to prevent any kind of cookie hijacking or those kind of event. And you can create your custom rule as well, right? So we do support PCRE based masking. That means match any regular expression that is matching this particular PCRE, and how many bits that needs to be masked. So you have a pretty good control what is coming into your application infrastructure and what is going out of your application infrastructure. Then we have an application access management module. That means before sending the request to the application server, right, we can do a sideband connectivity with your authentication server, and we can present a form to the user where user will actually punch in their username and password, and we can validate that particular username and password credential to your authentication server. And it could be anything, right? It could be Radius, it could be LDAP, it could be OCSP, Cabrios, could be anything, right? We support integration with almost all the authentication server which is available in the industry. That could be a multi-factor authentication as well, right? And only once the user is authenticated, it would be granted application access to your application infrastructure. You can also use this particular feature as a single sign-on. That means once the user is authenticated, it can access any of the application that you have. Or if you want to restrict it, you can grant how many applications the user can access. And we integrate with almost all the authentication vendors which is available in the industry. DNS Application Firewall, right? This is a much more use case for your service provider environment where these guys actually have a very high performance DNS infrastructure, right? So idea is anything that is malicious which is coming to your DNS infrastructure will be denied by the DNS Application Firewall, right? Or optionally we can send it to a honeypot. Any malicious request from the genuine user will be sanitized at the DNS Application Firewall level itself. The idea is that all the genuine query coming from the genuine user should be sent to the application infrastructure, and rest of the queries will be sanitized at the DNS application firewall level. And we have multiple DDoS mitigation feature with the integrated DDoS that we have, which is a pretty good comprehensive set of policies, right? Like SYN flood, you can have geographical location control, you can do a rate limiting, you can mitigate any kind of a slow layer 7 attack, or you can slow read, slow post kind of attack can also be mitigated by using the integrated DDoS mitigation functionality that we have. There are certain use cases with respect to the service provider, right? So whatever we have seen till now is much more focused towards the enterprise, but in service provider environment is little different, right? So what we can do is for the service provider environment, we have very specific solution which is available on A10 ADC, like your DHCP load balancing, your radius load balancing.
Just a sec. Let me see again. I
Okay.
request all of you to, if you are going on unmute, mute it immediately.
Right. DNS load balancing or SIP load balancing. Right. On top of that, there is a transparent load balancing or transparent switching that is also needed for mobile operators, right, to deploy any kind of a DPI kind of a solution, or caching kind of a solution, or maybe a security kind of a solution, right? So we can do a service chaining in those environment as well, and we can easily integrate with most of the service provider do have their own management and orchestration system, right? So we have a full exposure of the RESTful API, and we can integrate with any kind of a management and orchestration system that the service provider might be having. Right. So these are the very specific use cases for the service provider. You have your DNS or SIP or uh, uh, Radius application infrastructure where we can do the load balancing, or we can deploy it in a transparent mode in a service provider environment, and we can do a service chaining. That means all the incoming requests will be intercepted by A10 ADC, and selectively we can redirect the traffic to multiple service engines. So, for example, if your service provider wants to launch a parental control and don't want to put it in line, A10 ADC can actually help it, right? We can integrate with your Radius server, and only traffic coming from those users who have subscribed for the parental control service, traffic for those users will be sent to the parental control, and rest of the traffic will be actually routed directly towards the internet, right? So it will not only do the load balancing, but it will also optimize the usage of your security solutions. So you can actually have a service factory created for value-added services, and you can monetize it. As the revenue from the bandwidth selling is actually reducing day by day, these are the things which can actually generate revenue for the service providers. Right. So this is the use case I was talking about. Right. So we can integrate with the Radius server, and based on the Radius profiles, we can actually take a decision what kind of a traffic needs to be redirected to which kind of a service. And we can, since we can accommodate multiple solution with our CFW module that we have. So if there is a requirement for having ADC and CGN on the same piece of hardware, we can actually do that as well. And as I mentioned, right, means we integrate with almost every vendor, every orchestration or automation vendor which is available in the industry. Right. So, is there any query questions with respect to the ADC before we jump into the next topic, which is the SSL visibility solution that we have?
Tarun, there was a question from the audience. Like there are
Okay.
people who have already heard about Radware, F5 and all. They are proficient on that. They have heard about that.
Okay.
How much different
Okay.
compared to Radware and F5 kind of predominantly reputed and known brands in the market?
Okay. So yeah. So let me give you a pretty genuine answer on top of that, right? To manage solutions that is coming from Radware and F5, you need to learn a new language, right? The Radware CLI is entirely different. F5 does not even have a CLI, right? So they leverage on the Linux command to manage their system, right? With A10, you don't have to learn a new language. It's a Cisco standard CLI. So it's very, very easy to manage, right? The kind of a scalability that we have based on our architecture is actually multi times that Radware and F5 can actually provide. We have something called shared memory architecture. So a 16 gig RAM on our system would be equivalent to 48 gig RAM on either of Radware and F5 platform. You have seen the numbers, right? Means 220 Gbps of throughput we can actually deliver on a single 1U platform. So that's the kind of a scalability that we are talking. And on top of that, right, means it's a pretty powerful box, right? Means generally Radware and F5 will charge you for each and every functionality that these guys have. So for example, if you want to enable WAF on a Radware and F5 platform, you have to pay a license fee. A10, it comes by default. Right? The scalability that we have with our scale out cluster is 7 times more than what Radware and F5 can actually provide their customers. So I hope that will answer your question.
There was one more query, like
Yep.
platforms like Cisco and all. People do lot of lab testing, certification, and all some simulation kind of environment, GNS3 and other things are available. For A10 network, is there something? Suppose someone is wants to scale his career in this, they want to practice and simulated environment. Is there something like that?
In terms of the certification,
Yeah, certification and practice, learning by.
yeah. So let me give you a more genuine answer, right? So if you want to learn with A10 networks, there are multiple tools which is available there, right? There are
Hello.
certifications.
Hello. Is it audible?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Sriram. I'm calling from Chennai.
Okay.
So whatever queries you answered is the questions from my side.
Okay.
And, thanks for your clarity. And
Okay.
as far as FI is concerned, it is also a GUI kind of operation, not a CLI.
Correct.
GUI also
That's
available.
right.
Okay.
The GUI is available on all the platform, right? On all the
Okay.
platform. But when it comes to the firefighting, you have to come to the CLI. For example, if you are facing any issue with the performance and you rely on the GUI, which is something which I don't consider to be more reliable, right? The first thing that will be compromised when you have a very high utilization in terms of the CPU and all those things are the non-critical element within the system, right? So think yourself, right? Which would be the non-critical element? You don't want to drop the traffic which is coming to your load balancer to serve it, right? The non-critical element would be the management domain which is sitting on top of that, right? So HTTP daemon would be the first one to be compromised. And practically, you can actually see if you have faced those kind of a issue where the TAC has recommended for any kind of a CLI output, they are relying more on the CLI output rather than anything which is showing in the GI dashboard kind of a stuff, right? Means those are the typical cases that you can judge it yourself that why TAC is relying more on the output that is being given by the CLI rather than which is being shown by the GUI.
Okay. So, are you supporting the virtual edition so that we can practice on the lab,
Yeah,
something like
so
that?
right, as a follow-up, what I'm going to do is I will send you one link where you can register and download the virtual image, right? So you have an option to download virtual image which is compatible with VMware or KVM, and
Okay.
you will be able to generate the license as well, which will be good for next 30 days, right? Even if the
That is
license
a
is
30 days evaluation, huh? 30 days
yeah,
evaluation.
yeah, 30 days validity, right? Even if the license is not there, we don't stop you from logging into the system and seeing all the options that you can configure, right? So we don't do
Okay.
that, right? So for example, if you try F5's virtual image, until unless you have the license on top of that, you won't even see the options which is available. We don't do that, right? So even if the license is not there, still you will be able to configure the entire configuration, whatever you want to do it on the system.
So,
The
complete
only thing,
functionality I can explore, right?
yeah,
Complete
yeah,
functionality I can explore. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So 30 days is pretty good, and I can maximum level I will try and explore the possibility. Thanks for that.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, absolutely.
Then one more thing, you mentioned about GSLB, right?
Right.
GSLB. So it is similar to GLBV.
It's a global server load balancing. Some people call it GTM, some people call it GSLB, right? Some people call it global load balancing, GLB, right? But the idea
Yeah.
is to distribute the traffic geographically into multiple geographical region, right? So that you don't
So
have a
both
single
are
point
same.
of failure.
So both are same.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. Please proceed.
Right. So I hope the second question is also answered, right? Means you have the
Yes.
virtual image available, which is available for the testing and whatever knowledge enhancement that you can do. A10 also has a YouTube channel, right? You can go and subscribe to that particular channel. There is a lot of good video that will help you in terms of configuring the system from the scratch, right? There are feature specific tech talks videos which is also available, right? So you can visit that particular channel and you can get multiple training videos which is available there.
Okay, sir. Last question.
Yeah.
With a laptop of 16 GB memory, with the GNS3, I can explore the possibility with the virtual edition
How much
of
memory?
16 GB.
16
1 6.
GB. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We need only 4K.
Ah, that's it. Huh? Okay, okay.
Yeah, that's the kind of a platform that we have, right? Means most of the testing that I do for my customer, I do it on my laptop itself, right? So
Okay, okay,
yeah,
sir.
I don't see any issues.
Okay, so let me try to form some topologies in GNS3, and if at all any clarification is there, I will get back to you.
Sure,
Okay.
sure, sure, sure.
Okay. So because sorry for that, a lot of questions are coming up.
No, that's
So
okay.
if you
That's
want,
pretty good actually.
yeah, yeah, if I want to break that FI with A10, okay, in the commercial segment, it is very attractive, or it is almost.
No, it's pretty decent, right? And if you include the fact that we don't have any license for any of the feature, it becomes further more
Uh-huh.
attractive, right? And specifically when you go to the virtual form factor, the kind of offering that we are giving with the option whether you want to go with a perpetual or a flex pool, no other vendor is actually providing that kind of a functionality, right?
So support renewal is not a challenge. It's going only, right?
Yeah, means support renewal is actually standard, right? Means whether you take the solution from F5, A10, and all those things. The good part with A10 is when your renewal cycle comes, you don't have to renew each and every independent licenses because there is no license from A10,
Okay.
right?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the clarity.
Okay. So let's move ahead because we are running short of time. The second topic that I want to cover is SSL Insight, and then after this particular topic, also we can take further questions. So the second product that I would, or the solution I want to cover is SSL visibility solution that we have. We call it SSL Insight. Uh, as on date, right, around about 94% of traffic, internet traffic is actually encrypted, right? Everything is HTTPS. Only, e- even if you want to find some HTTP site, right, you have to Google it. And there are only few test sites which is available on HTTP right now, and everything else is actually migrated to HTTPS. This is a two-way sword, right? Although it gives you the encryption, right? But it also gives you the blind spot. That means a lot of attackers and the malwares are actually using encryption as a tool to bypass the security solution that the customer are actually having. There is a common myth or the impression, right, that encryption actually gives you the security, which is not correct. It does gives you privacy, but it actually can hurt your security, right? So for the security perspective, encryption is not good. It's good for privacy. If you see a typical infrastructure for a typical enterprise, right, you will have a solution, security solution that can help you from any kind of infiltration, like your IPS secure web gateways. Then you can have a solution which can actually help you in terms of blocking the communication of your bots and malware to CNC servers, like your APT and LT malware solution. And then there are solutions which is available which can help you in terms of your data exfiltration, like your DLP and forensics, right? But if you look at carefully, each of the solutions actually works on the application layer. That means if your data is actually encrypted, none of these solutions will be able to enforce policies on top of that. And lot of security vendors have actually realized this, and that's why they are coming up with some kind of an integrated SSL visibility solution. So if you go to maybe next generation firewall vendors like Checkpoint, Fortinet, Palo Alto, you name it, right? And ask them that can you do SSL decryption or SSL inspection within your system? They will say yes. From the checkbox perspective, it's a yes, they can do it. But these solutions are not uh, scalable, first of all, right? The moment you enable SSL decryption on, irrespective of vendors, right? The moment you enable SSL decryption on these solutions, the performance goes down by 90%. And this has been validated by NSS, right? Means it's not coming from A10's uh, version, right? It's something which is a validated fact from third party analysis, right? The performance goes down significantly. It's not flexible. That means whatever decryption these guys would be doing, they would be doing for their own consumption. So if you have two different security solutions from two different vendors, you have to enable SSL decryption on both the vendors. And it's also difficult to manage this particular solution, right? Specifically when you want to maintain a right balance between privacy compliances and the security. For example, if you want to go for a GDPR compliance, then you have to uh, have a single enforcement of the decryption policy. You cannot have a single domain which will be decrypted on, say, solution X and which will be bypassed on solution Y. You need to have a uniformity into the policies that you will be creating, right? So more the solution you will have, the difficulty it would be for the admin guys to keep the consistency into the solution, right? So this is a typical infrastructure any security vendor will have. They will have secure web gateway. They will have ATP kind of a solution. They will have IPS. They will have next generation firewall. First of all, if you want to enable SSL decryption on top of that, each of these solution needs to be sized for 10 times of its capacity. Second thing, each solution will act as a SSL proxy, That means there would be latency that would be added. And the third thing, and which I consider it to be a more important thing, there would not be any consistency in terms of the policies that each solution will have. Because secure web gateway will have its own database, ATP can have its own database, IPS can have its own database, and the next generation firewall can have its own database. Right. So what does A10 can provide in terms of this particular issue, solving this particular issue? So we have a SSL visibility solution which is much more scalable, right? So we can scale up to 40 Gbps of outbound SSL throughput, 75 Gbps of inbound SSL throughput, which can act as a centralized policy enforcement engine, right? Since there is going to be a single platform that is going to do the decryption, you will have a uniformity into policies that you will be creating for decryption and bypass. Right, the solution looks like this. You will have a centralized SSL visibility solution, and all the security solution will be sideband now, right? So A10 SSL Insight solution can actually do the decryption at the same time. It can do the traffic engineering. That means it can decide what kind of a traffic needs to be sent to the DLP, secure web gateway, APT, IPS, and next generation firewall. And it's not only the SSL visibility that we have, there are multiple correlated features that can be enabled on the SSL Insight solution, like application firewall, right? If you don't have a secure web gateway, the secure web gateway functionality can be enabled on top of SSL I solution itself, right? We do support ICAP integration. That means we will be able to integrate with any kind of a DLP and gateway level antivirus solution. We can do traffic steering, right? So only the relevant traffic needs to go to IPS and or any of the security solutions. So, for example, if you are decrypting say 70% of the traffic, and as a policy, if you want to bypass 30% of the traffic, the reason could be anything, right? The reason could be a compliance. Uh, Also, right,
Hey,
GDPR and
Baban,
all this
here.
stuff, right? You don't want to intercept any kind of a banking or healthcare site.
Baban,
There is no point in terms of sending that particular traffic to
আমাকে ওইখানে
DLP or
ছোট
IPS,
কালো
right? So I
জিআইএস
can
লেখা
bypass
ব্যাগ
those
আছে না,
traffic as well.
একটা ব্যাগের মধ্যে দেখো
I can do a
ঠিক
very,
আছে,
very
ওই তো
selective
ভাবছি
traffic
ওই
steering.
ব্যাগটা দাও।
We can do a URL filtering and web filtering also on top of the an SSLI, right? So the database subscription option is available. Then the threat intelligence is also available as a subscription. So you can utilize the entire IP reputation database to create very, very granular policies. And then the application access management, which we discussed in ADC, can also be utilized uh, to actually do a filtering based on the user ID rather than the basic filtering, which is on IP-based filtering. So these are the platforms that we have in SSLI, right? So you have vThunders, the virtual images, which can do 500 Mbps to 3 Gbps of throughput, right? And we are talking about SSL throughput right now. This is not a generic layer 4 to layer 7 throughput. Then we have 1040, which is 1.5 gig, 3000 series, around about 2.5 gig, right? Then multiple options in 3000, 4000, and 5000 series, ranging from 5 gig to 10 gig. Then we have 5000 series, which is 15 gig to 25 gig. Right. The same solution actually gives you, as I mentioned, right, I mean, the Harmony controller is a unified management and analytics platform that we have. Right. It actually gives you a pretty comprehensive set of analytics and visibility. Right. So the same platform can be used for bidirectional inspection, right? So we can intercept any kind of a traffic that is going out from your network to the internet. At the same time, we will be able to inspect any kind of a session which is originating on the internet and coming to your application infrastructure as well, right? So you don't have to invest in two different solution. The same solution can actually help you in terms of the bidirectional inspection as well. then you can the same solution can also help you in terms of meeting the compliance, right? So whether it's a PCI DSS compliance, HIPAA compliances, or privacy compliances like GDPR, right? There are multiple options which is available on the solution to actually intercept and bypass traffic. You can do it based on the URL classification, that means the category of that particular URL. You can bypass it based on the domain name. You can bypass it based on the certificate issuer also, right? You can do it based on the combination of source and destination IP address, physical interfaces, or you can integrate, we can integrate with your Active Directory and take a decision based on user group and user ID. So you can do a very, very selective inspection, or you can do a very, very selective bypass as well, right? So it gives you a very comfortable position in terms of introducing this particular solution within your environment. What practically we have seen is a lot of customers don't want to introduce this particular solution because they fear that it can create a lot of changes within their environment and a lot of disturbance in terms of you're not doing any kind of SSL interception on what day one, and day two you're doing a full SSL interception for all the traffic, right? You can start small. That means try to intercept one category of the URL and then gradually increase that particular interception. And maybe over the period of time, you will have a pretty good balance between the privacy and the security, I would say. Right. So A10 web classification has more than 600 million domain, right? 27 different billion URL classification. There are 83 different category of the URL which is available, and we support 45 plus different languages as well, right? So it's not only English, we do support multi-language URL classification. And it also has 12 million different badly reputed IP addresses as well, which can be correlated to the URL. So we call this particular solution, although it's a man in the middle solution, but it's a trusted man in the middle solution, right? And it can integrate with any kind of ecosystem that we have. So for example, if you have created your internal CA and you want to validate the certificate which we are signing, you can integrate with that particular CA tool either by using CRL or OCSP, right? So it has got a pretty good feature set to make things pretty dynamic. This is how the solution actually works, right? So we act as a man in the middle. We offload the SSL handshake in between. We do a dummy handshake with the original server. We get the credential of the certificate, and based on that particular credential and the internal CA, we generate a proxy certificate which will be presented to the user. Since there is a trust relationship between the proxy certificate and the user, which is already being made as a one-time activity, right? The user will accept this particular certificate, and whatever is coming from user to A10 solution will be encrypted using that certificate. Whatever is actually going to the security zone or a decrypt zone is clear text, and whatever is going from A10 to external server will also be encrypted by using the public certificate, right, which is over the internet. Whatever is there within the secure decrypt zone is actually decrypted, and now your security solution will be in a better position to enforce the policy on top of this particular decrypted traffic, and it can do it on the application layer itself. And this is for the very first time. For example, if a particular user is accessing google.com, this particular workflow is applicable for the very first time. For the second user that comes for the same website, the cycle is much more shortened, because whatever certificate that we have created, we are going to cache that particular certificate as well, right? So there could be questions from the customer that what kind of a latency the system will introduce if I choose to do SSL decryption. The latency is only on the first request, and for the rest of the request, there is virtually no latency. So the effect of latency is not there. Right. So for the inbound SSL visibility, we do support TLS 1.3. For the outbound thing, you can actually block TLS 1.3 by using templates, and it can fall back to TLS 1.0 and 1.1 or 1.2. Right. So for the inbound thing, we can have a TLS 1.3, which is supported on the platform. There is going to be for outbound traffic also TLS 1.3 would be supported as and when it gets the traction is there for TLS 1.3. These are few of the reference topology that you can actually utilize to design the solution for your customers, right? So the system can be deployed in a layer 2 mode. That means the entire thing is layer 2. The A10 solution as well as the security solution is L2. It could be a combination of L2 and L3. That means A10 is deployed in a layer 2 mode, but the security solution is deployed in a layer 3 mode. That's a typical case with the next generation firewalls, right? This is a full L3 mode, right? That means A10 is in L3, and the security solution is the top one is the A10 is in L3, and the security solution is in L2 mode. The bottom one is full the L3. That means everything is deployed in L3 mode. So it's a pretty flexible solution. You can pick and choose. Uh, if there is no other option, like you don't want to create new subnets and all those stuff, you can pick and choose layer 2 mode of deployment and you can stick with that. We do support transparent and explicit proxy support. So if you want that A10 SSLI should act as a proxy server for your client, we do support that, right? And on top of that, you can create authentication as well as URL filtering policies. So you can, if you want to replace the existing proxies to upgrade to A10 SSLI solution, give the visibility to rest of the solution. At the same time, A10 should act as an explicit proxy. We do support that as well. And we do support integration with the third-party web proxies, right? So whether it's a transparent proxy or an explicit proxy, right? We should be able to integrate with any kind of environment that the customer is having. And what goes within the decrypt zone? Almost everything, right? So we integrate with all the security vendors, whether it's FireEye, Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet, McAfee, right? Trend Micro, RSA, you name it. Since there is no specific integration that needs to be done in terms of the developing a code, we can integrate with almost everybody. So not only doing the SSL visibility, we can also do the load balancing for security elements. So if you have a couple of next generation firewall, apart from giving the SSL visibility to these firewalls, we can also do the load balancing. Rather than having these firewalls in an active backup, now you have active firewall. We can do a traffic steering. That means once we decrypt the traffic, we can actually steer it through multiple solution, right? So first could be IPS, second could be firewall, and so on. This is a full redundant reference topology, right? So if you want to create redundancy, also we do support VRRP clustering, right? That can be used to create the solution fully redundant, or you can actually leverage with a bypass kit as well, right? So we can integrate with any standard bypass kit and have our solution out of path as well. That means if anything goes wrong with A10 on any of the security elements, uh, there would not be any outage, and the path will be closed, right? It will be free open. We integrate with Ixia, Niaika, right? Those kind of bypass switches pretty well. There is a very specific platform, the entry level platform that we have 1040 without SSL card, that comes in a comes with a integrated bypass unit, right? So for a very low end requirement where the SSLI CPS requirement is less than 1000 new connection per second, right? You can actually utilize this particular platform fairly well. Right. So the solution is having a multiple advanced feature like URL filtering, ICAP support, user authentication, application visibility. You can integrate with any kind of IP reputation services. Then the AFlex, the scripting language that we discussed on the EDC product, it's actually applicable for SSL visibility solution as well, right? Then we have a HSM support as well, right? So if there is a compliance from the customer to have an integrated HSM card, we do support integrated HSM card on few of the hardwares that we provide, and we can integrate with the network HSM as well, right? If you have solutions from Thales or those kind of HSM service provider, right, means we can integrate with that. We can do a local breakout as well. So for example, if you have different kind of a traffic, some traffic needs to go to internet and some traffic needs to go to the cloud, like Microsoft Cloud, right? We can do a local breakout, and the traffic that needs to go to internet can be redirected to all the security engines that you have, and the traffic that needs to go to the cloud can be routed directly to the cloud by using a solution, right? So it's overlapping with a CASB and SD-WAN kind of a solution, but it's a pretty comprehensive classification that we can do on A10 SSLI. And at the same time, we can support next up load balancing. That means we can do the link load balancing on the same platform as well. Right. So these are the multiple integrated solution that we have. And you can actually take a decision to intercept and bypass based on the URL category. ICAP support, right? You can integrate with any kind of a DLP and antivirus solution that you have. We do support request mode and response mode both, right? So only the selected traffic will be given to DLP and antivirus. That will make them much more scalable. If you deploy those solution inline, the scalability is always a question mark, right? But when you have ICAP integration, they can scale fairly well. Right. These are some of the OEM integration that we have. And we can do the user authentication based on any of the protocol, like we can do integrate with any of the authentication system that you have. It could be Radius, Kerberos, it could be Active Directory, right? So the entire application access management module that we have is actually applicable and available with the A10 SSLI solution as well. And this is a snapshot of the application visibility that we have, right? So that's a kind of a DPI that we run on top of this, right? We have around about 3,000 different application signature, and you can actually get the visibility what kind of a traffic is flowing through your environment. And then we can do application based traffic steering as well. So if certain application needs to be redirected to certain security solutions, we can create very granular policies on top of that. Then the threat intelligence platform it's a combination of URL filtering and threat intelligence, right? That is coming from the web root, right? So you will be able to create policies, access policies, as well as decryption policies based on any of these database that is available. Right. Aflex actually gives you a pretty good control over what kind of policies that you want to create, right? So almost everything is natively supported on the platform. But if you want some kind of customization on top of that, you can always use Aflex, which is nothing but a TCL-based scripting language. These are the models which is available with HSM, right? So 5440, 5840, 6630. That ranges from 15 gig to 40 gig, right? So if there is a pretty large organization which is very particular to go with a model with a HSM card, we can actually propose these models to them. Right. So we do support SCEP, right? That simplify and automate the SSLI forward proxy certificate for outbound traffic. That means if the server is publishing a certificate which is not actually certified by a well-known CA, or if the certificate is actually expired, right? What you need to do, whether you want to block that particular traffic or you want to continue, right? Those kind of advanced policies you can actually create. This is the example of the local breakout that we have, right? So we can identify the traffic. All the internet bound traffic will be redirected to the security engines, and all the SaaS based services, right, can be routed directly towards the internet. Because first of all, this traffic cannot be decrypted because of the certificate pinning that these guys actually use. And second, the cloud provider itself actually recommend to not enforce any kind of a security policies on top of their traffic, because they are taking care of the security within their cloud. Analytics and easy to use, right? Means although the solution actually looks pretty complicated, right? It's a very powerful solution, but when you see the configuration, it's pretty simple. This is actually the dashboard that you'll be getting on A10 GUI as well as Harmony Controller GUI. There's a default topology that you have, but you can pick and choose the customized topology as well, right? Whatever fits your environment well, right? Whether you have the explicit proxy, you don't have the explicit proxy, whether you want to go with a layer 2 mode of deployment, layer 3 mode of deployment, right? Just click next, right? What kind of a bypass configuration that you want to do. And then you will be getting the dashboard and troubleshooting instances as well, right? So within 4 to 5 clicks, you will be able to configure everything from the GUI. And it also helps you in terms of the troubleshooting as well. These are the snapshot that we have taken from the dashboard, right? So it gives you a pretty good uh, analytics and visibility in that traffic, how much traffic is actually decrypted, how much traffic is actually bypassed, right? What are kind of a ciphers is being negotiated, right? What kind of a ciphers that you are actually seeing, what kind of protocols that is running, right? Whether it's RSA or ECC, DHE, right? So, for example, if you want to enhance the capacity by using these analytics and metrics, you can actually do that. And then you have access logs as well. This is the visibility on of the application traffic, right? So the bottom, you see the distribution of different application based on the signatures, right? You will get a pretty good analysis of how your bandwidth is getting utilized. This is another snapshot of the dashboard. How much traffic is being pumped into which kind of application. And these are the transaction log, access log, right? Or proxy kind of a log. Whether you bypass it or whether you access it, right? You'll be getting these kind of log. Harmony controller, right? Means, as I mentioned, it's a centralized management platform. The reports that we have seen, it's also available in Harmony controller. The recommendation is if you have uh, multiple A10 SSLI devices, and if you want to manage it centrally, right, you can actually offer a Harmony controller, right? So similar dashboard which is available in Harmony controller, rather than single device, now you can see multiple device, which is on the left hand side, right? You can pick and choose what kind of a topology that you want to deploy, and the similar configuration troubleshooting dashboard as well as the visibility dashboard that we have seen on a single device, you will be getting it on a Harmony controller as well. Right? Absolutely similar. And this is the application distribution, how your bandwidth is getting utilized. Right. Any questions with respect to SSL visibility solution?
Tarun?
Yeah.
Sriram again.
Yeah, sure.
Is it a 256-bit encryption or above that?
Okay, it's logical two devices. It's a logical two devices, right? Since we support partitions, you can create two partitions, and each partition can act as an individual device.
Normally, when I go for a licensing with SSL, they used to ask me whether it is 128 or 2.
They don't.
No. In couple of cases, I purchased a license for this, not for the FI and radar I'm talking, for some other purpose for my application.
Okay.
When I went for a third-party kind of license, they asked me whether you need a 128 or 2, something like that.
Yeah, this is different, right? Means what we are doing is we are leveraging on the internal CA infrastructure to do the interception, right? So for doing a SSL interception, you don't have to go for a certificate or something like that.
So there is no license for this also, right?
Yeah, so this is a separate product altogether, right? There is no license for this, but there are subscription which needs to be there. For example, the URL filtering database that needs to be updated daily. The IP reputation that needs to be updated daily. So it's a very similar concept that you have in next generation firewall. That whatever subscriptions are there, those subscription needs to be subscribed for a year or 2 year or 5 year, whatever you need to have. But there is no license. So for example, if you want to use URL filtering, you don't need a license. But to update the database, you will need a subscription for updating those databases.
Great. Coming to the load balancer concept again.
Okay.
So when the traffic, suppose for example, I am running on application with outreach. So when the incoming traffic is reaching this load balancer, suppose I have two. So in what scenario it will divert the traffic to the application server in two different paths? Meaning what the time interval? That you have to set it.
Sorry, your voice is breaking, Sriram. Yeah.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay. So in the load balancer setup, under that load balancer, I have the application server running. Okay.
Right.
So two servers are running.
Okay.
So your load balancer has to divert to the particular server in a period of time. Maybe
Okay.
200 users are coming. So it
Okay.
has to divert to server A.
Okay.
And the second one, as a redundancy purpose, you are using the second A10 server, A10 load balancer. So that will go to the next server, something like that. So
Okay.
what is the frequency of changing the traffic from A to B or B to A?
In terms of the servers?
In the load balancer
Correct. So in terms of the server, right, server 1 and server 2, what is the frequency of changing the server from server 1 to server 2 while sending the traffic?
Yes.
That's okay.
It's hitting only one application server always. He has to move to the second server.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So that totally depends on what kind of a load balancing algorithm that you are selecting, right? So for example, if you're selecting least connection or a round robin, without any persistency, that means if there are two sessions that is coming into load balancer, one will be sent to server number 1 and second will be sent to the server number 2, right? If you have weighted least connection on weighted round robin and you have assigned weight as 4 or 5 on both the servers, that means 5 session will go to server number 1, then 5 session will go to server number 2. So you can play in, with the weights to control the traffic.
Anytime I can change it.
Yeah, anytime you can change.
Fine. Thanks for that. Any chance you can share this presentation, Mr. Tarun?
Yeah, this presentation, as I told you, all the sessions, even yesterday also, everything will be available in SlideShare and YouTube. You can get the mails, you can check from there.
Because last two sessions I couldn't attend because of other work. That's why I'm asking.
It is there. Last sessions also presentation and recorded video. It is available in our.
Okay.
You you will get the mail on the same on which link you can check it from there. You can definitely see.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think Tarun, we are in the factory, so we are about to close. So anyone
Right.
having any queries, you can shoot last couple of queries. Otherwise, we will end the session. Okay, so far no other queries. So we can proceed to the next slides. What is there? Anything else is there?
Right. Thanks a lot, guys.
No. So you go through
Thank you.
the slides.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Just a sec. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a common this thing in COVID-19 outbreak. So be safe at your home. And this is the fourth webinar in the series. We have the final one of this weekly webinar tomorrow. So do join in our tomorrow's webinar. That will be on mobile device management, connecting everything kind of a platform. That will be interesting also, I think, for all of you. Look forward to see you, all of you, tomorrow in our tomorrow's webinar. Thank you. Thank you, Tarun, and thank you, audience.
Thank you.
Tarun, once again. Tarun,
Yeah.
Sriram. So
Yeah,
don't
Shiva.
forget to set a virtual edition, no? That download
Yeah.
link.
Yeah. So, Sushoman, I will request you if you can connect us so that I can
Yeah,
send
sure,
it
I'll do that.
to.
I
Yeah.
think you have my mail ID, Siram. I am also.
Yeah, I have.
You have?
I have.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
You reply me that mail. That mail itself, I'll connect you to Tarun.
Okay, once again, hold on.
You have got the WebEx link through that mail. You can reply there. I'll connect you.
Okay.
Otherwise, also in generic way, you can send us mails to info@primeinfosub.com.
I'm responding to your email ID.
Yeah, no problem. You reply there, I'll connect you to Tarun. Sure. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, the audience, and thank you, Tarun,
Thank you.
Satya, and Rajak, all of you, once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
I sent. Mr. Mugat, I sent already.
Sure.